guess it's time for me to talk about one of these here. I was doing
Woo!
extra research. I'm going to bundle a couple together too, but I'm not trying to be over long. Um, so before I get back into the Asian stuff and how groundbreaking it is, and Kaylin's already covered a lot of that. I want to talk about an American character who was also very groundbreaking, and everybody here at least is familiar with her. Um, Foxy Brown, played by
Oh
Pam
yeah.
Grier, 1974 film. So when she did this film, Pam Grier was, I think she was 24 when she shot it. Her
Hmm.
first job, she was a cameo on Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. She was 19 or 20. And to be honest, I've seen Beyond the Valley of the Dolls at least 100 times, and I've never been able to spot her. So if anybody ever does a screenshot and points her out to me, please send it to me because I can't find her. But
Yeah.
she's in the
I've
big
watched that a
party.
lot too. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's where she got
Yeah.
discovered.
Wow.
But so she drifted quickly into like exploitation movies and women in prison movies. And
Mm.
she did two with Jack Hill. One was called The Big Dollhouse, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
straightforward sexploitation action, and then she did one called A Big Birdcage, which is actually my favorite women in prison film because though many didn't realize that at the time Jack Hill was deliberately satirizing the subgenre, so it's deliberately even more outrageous than not necessarily more shocking or violent or anything, just more outrageous and absurd than the other ones. And she plays a great character named Blossom, who has a lover named Django, played by Sid Haig, and that's the first time they work together, I believe. And they're a couple who basically want a revolution. It's very much of its time, and I've always loved Django and Blossom, even though ostensibly, really, the main characters are the women who are imprisoned on this Filipino island and they're trying to escape. But Blossom and Django have other plans. They kind of get Blossom kind of gets uh, kidnapped and has to be a prisoner. But in her mind, it's like I'm pretending to be a prisoner. I'm infiltrating this thing, and they have to
Mhm.
get this corrupt warden deliberately named Zappa. He, he's Filipino. He's Filipino, and then Vic Diaz, who is in every Filipino movie ever made. He plays the gay guard, and of course, he's really wanting to. Once Sid Haig decides to infiltrate the gang, who are the prison guards, Vic Diaz wants to infiltrate Sid Haig, so to speak, and it doesn't happen. But Sid's pretty funny. Yeah, he's totally clueless. Um, so yeah, a lot of stuff happens in that movie. But anyway, she had strong personality, and so she ended up doing Coffee with Jack Hill, and that became like a giant, super mega hit. And
Mm.
uh, in that movie, she's playing someone who's she's a nurse whose little sister died of drugs that were dealt to her in the school system, and so she
Mm.
goes on this wrong revenge thing, and uh, just along the way somehow picks up all these skills in fighting and everything. And she's tough. And it turns out that uh, her boyfriend, who is an aspiring politician and a total sellout, I'm not going to use the UT term, but that's what they would call him. Um, he he uh, he actually was behind the people that dealt the drugs to the kids. So, which that's a common trope in these kind of
Mhm.
movies because that's common in real life. Um,
Yeah.
so, anyway, so they wanted to do a sequel called Burn Coffee Burn, and I don't know, but kind of tastes like Starbucks. But they were like, let's make a new character, Foxy Brown, and they did not have a profession for her as a nurse. So they just were like, what the fuck? Just we won't even mention what she does for a living. It's not important. But she is poor, but she has enough money to help out her delinquent brother, Link, played by, the immortal Antonio Fargas, who,
Huggy
most people.
Bear.
Yes, Huggy Bear was what he was known as. I knew him as Huggy Bear as a child. I didn't know he was playing in tons and tons of R-rated movies, playing the outrageous characters. At the same time, he was
Yeah.
doing Starsky and Hutch. But and actually, it's really funny how the worm has turned because the movies he did in the '70s are now much more watched than Starkey and
Yeah.
Hutch reruns.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But Fargus is a he's a brilliant actor, and he's so he's so physical, and because he's really skinny and wiry and melodramatic. So whenever he has a death scene, it's you can't take your eyes off it. And the worst is in Across 110th Street. That one is actually realistic though, and it's really gross. Luckily, you don't see most of what happens to his character, but he's just like, "I'm gonna die," he's been screaming, "I'm dying, man!" But so he sells out Foxy Brown's boyfriend, who is a basically a Fed who was trying to break up this drug gang selling on streets, drugs on the streets, run by these kind of really rich mobster types. And so, of course, this guy was going to follow the food chain, and he was played by Terry Carter. So Terry Carter, mainly, I guess, among people my generation, his face anyway, he was Colonel Ty on Battlestar Galactica. Uh,
Yes.
though he was on quite a few other, but that's kind of most famous that I can think of. But so he's the boyfriend, and he's had plastic surgery and witness protection program. And fucking Link, Antonio Fargas, he always owes all this money to these loan sharks, and they're the same people that I was mentioning, these rich executives who run this drug thing. He's in debt to them, and so he goes, her new boyfriend looks a lot like her old boyfriend. And he does it. He sells the guy out, and the guy gets blown away in front of Foxy, collapses in her arms, and that's her revenge trip on this. And so, she confronts her brother, destroys his house, and shoots a bunch of times, but only hits him once in the ear. And only because you're my brother, I'm not killing you. But actually, the only reason she didn't kill him is because he gave her some names. I think if he hadn't done that, she would have just killed him. But anyway, so later on, some of the thugs come in to the exact same place. It's still messed up. They're still high. He's still with the same white girl he's been sleeping with. After all this chaos, they're just going about their business like, nah, why clean up? Let's just keep shooting up, man. And so the gangsters come in and just annihilate them. It's very gory. And by this time, Foxy is posing as a model, or really a call girl, and she's kind of infiltrating that. She ends up never having to have sex with a guy because she tricks this guy who predictably is this really old, fat, unattractive, but very rich senator guy, And there's a lot of class consciousness in this film. I just want to make that clear. And I'm saying that for a reason, because I didn't know until tonight how many people hated this movie because of people, I mean, like critics, film critics, and sociologists. People I don't really normally listen to, but I learned a lot tonight about it. So yeah, that's her trip. She finally gets found out, and they send her to this place called the farm, and they torture her, and they're planning to rape her, and they're these two stupid rednecks, and she does the kind of MacGyver thing. She's tied up and she sees a coat hanger, and she twists it around like this, these two coat hangers together while she's tied up. And then when the one guy comes at her, she just gouges his eyes out with the ends of it. And then the other guy, who's also like a mechanic, the shaven headed bald guy, it's like a garage. He comes in, he's like, "What are you doing?" And she like pours all this shit all over him, and he thinks it's water at first. And to be honest, I did too the first time I saw it. But then I was like, he's like, "Where's the gasoline?" She's like, "You wanted gasoline, motherfucker," And then she just, of course, hurls the lighter, and they explode into a million pieces. Now, there's another thing about Foxy, of course, a subplot that grounds it in its era. She's also friends with and a sort of member of a Black Panther, Black Power group who are cleaning up the streets, trying to keep the kids from taking the drugs that these white mobsters are ultimately getting down to them. So these guys are really cool, but they're really cool. They're very nice to Foxy. They help her out, but they are by any means necessary kind of dudes. And so when they get a chance to grab the leader of this organization is a woman, and her boyfriend, the second in command, loves beating the shit out of people. And of course, he's an extreme racist, so he uses the N-word like every 10 seconds. And when they catch him, Yeah, they pull down his pants. The Black Panther guy pulls out a really cool looking knife, and he's like, "No, not that!" And then it's like, "Yeah, that." And so she brings it to Catherine, the gangster, and she said, "I think I'm going to give you a token here." And she looks at it, and of course, it's absurd, but I guess possible. But she looks in the jar at the pickled genitals and goes, "Steve," and they're all like she knows it's
Uh, well,
and she's just like, "Kill me, I don't want to live." And she's like, "Bitch, I want you to suffer." And along the way she also meets Sid Haig, who plays like this pilot, and she pretends to get drunk, and like she's gonna fuck him, and they're gonna attack the gangsters, and she actually does grab the plane, and they don't do it in the air. She just rides this old plane down this field and smashes one of their little hideout things. But what's funny is, so when I met Sid Haig, visual aids, I took care of my cat. So I don't know if you can see this. This is actually a scene from Foxy Brown that
Hmm.
I just described. So this is Pam Grier, and she's pretending to be drunk. Sid Haig, he's the pilot. He thinks she's gonna fuck him, and they're getting in the plane together, and they're just talking this hilarious stuff to each other. And he wrote about the picture to Henry Good Times, Sid Haig, and I was like, that's a key point. So I mean, because he said I really loved making that scene. I was like, that's so incredible. Um, but yeah, so the bottom line is it has an awesome soundtrack. You can listen to the soundtrack independently of the movie if you like funk music or 70s soul music.
Love funk. Yeah.
Willie Hutch does it, who did the Mac, and this is even better, I think, than the Mac. And the main theme song is incredible. The opening 3 minutes of the movie, I think, are probably in my top 10 openings of any movie. It's like that song and all this kind of crazy psychedelic views of Pam Grier, defying gravity and dancing and swirling around like you're on a trip, and not a voyage, but that kind of trip. And it's all kind of timed to the music, and it has this imperishable line that's like, he you, she's a treasure of ecstasy, take it from me, that most men have been searching for. Like, that's the woman you want to find right there. But what I learned tonight was that, I mean, I knew it was controversial, blah blah blah, and I know in hindsight it would be not play in a regular theater nowadays. It would play it would play in an art house theater. It really would. But at the time, not at the time, but years later, and I never knew this. If y'all knew this, you can take away my film geek card. But it was a video nasty. I never knew it was on the video nasty list.
Really?
Any of y'all know that?
Mm-mm.
I
Had
was.
no
I mean,
idea.
I'm
That's
familiar
weird.
with the vast majority of movies that were on that list. You go and you
Mm.
seek them out to see how bad they
Right.
are.
Yeah, exactly.
But Foxy
Yeah.
Brown was briefly on the video nasty list, and the
Huh.
UK would not let the movie be. They confiscated the prints when it came into the UK and Kingdom.
And you know what their justification for it is? What aspect? What
Well, it
scene?
falls
I
under
mean,
the Obscene Recordings Act of
yeah.
1959. Okay, so to answer your question, I'll 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 rephrase somebody famous. Everyone here knows who he is. I interviewed Neil Gaiman like 25 years ago, and we talked about censorship. That was one of the main things we talked about. And
Hmm.
he said, you see, we never had a Bill of Rights in England. He
Mm.
he lives in Minnesota.
Right. Yeah.
That's why he's in Minnesota. He's like, we didn't have a
Hmm.
Bill of Rights. We don't have a First Amendment, and
Hmm.
it's just not the same. And he said the Obscene Publication Act, basically it authorizes all of the government agents to, if they see something you're bringing in, and they personally, like I'm Joe Blow and I work for the government, and me personally, I don't like that nude scene on the cover of that, I have the right then to destroy the entire shipment, and the government has my back.
Got it.
And then the BBFC, which used to rule all this stuff, run for a long time like this by this insane Puritan named Furman. Uh, he would create these crazy reasons, but actually I did not read the reason, but I think my theory is the Neil Gaiman anecdote is somebody in customs was like, no, whatever. It's a black woman
Yeah.
being sexy or black
Now
woman
that makes sense because they operate on this what they're given ministerial power, and that ministerial power means that they have the power of the state individually for making those kinds of decisions, and they're protected on their decision. But yeah, just what you're talking about, if there's no consistency there, yeah, you're right, that makes sense. One guy is offended by it, he's in the position to make the decision, he makes a quote unquote ministerial decision as a part of his job, it's gone.
Well, after a while it evolved quickly into where there were so many horror and violent movies of different kinds, either like Faces of Death kind of movies or just gory horror movies, that 75% of their reasons would be generic. They'd be like, it's a snuff film. None of them had ever seen a snuff film. They didn't know what a snuff film was. That was just, oh, it's a snuff film. That, and of course there's someone that implies, yes, somebody dies for real on camera, but they're just assuming that, and that's the way a catch-all, like, this Joe D'Amato movie is a snuff film. Beyond the Darkness, Boy Omega, that's a snuff film. It's like, no, it's not a snuff film, dude. But anyway, I didn't know Foxy Brown was a video nasty. So now I have even more respect for it. And
wow.
But it on the Wikipedia thing I read, it talked about like, and I didn't expect this. It talked about like themes and like stereotypes and like sociological. And I've never read Wikipedia go into that kind of detail on an exploitation movie unless it was like way more famous than say Foxy Brown. Foxy Brown's very famous, but I mean, if it was about like say the Blair Witch Project, yeah, okay, I would get that. They're going to tie it into the dominant culture and dig deep into it, but it started as a low budget exploitation movie. So I haven't actually read on Wikipedia. I have in some books, but I've never read a blaxploitation movie broken down this way. And it was just like, the person who wrote it obviously has a grudge against these kind of films. Did state many times that it's successful, it made a lot of money, but they quote all these critics, all the usual, Pauline Kael, Joe Canby, and they're all they're all like, this is horrible. She's using her body just like she did in those Filipino movies. This is meaningless. This isn't woman power. This is woman enslavement. And after a few paragraphs of this, I'm just like, okay, once again, they didn't bother to actually watch the film. So, but the people who did watch the film, a current of criticism, it gave credit, which is what I'm familiar with, is that it's considered the first really powerful, strong, like physically, mentally strong action heroine of any race in an American film that like broke through to where everyone knows the movie, and admittedly that era faded, but it was ubiquitous. Like, for instance, where I live, a lot of my Uber drivers and different things like that are they're like middle-aged black guys, a little older than me. And I can name any of these movies, they'll start strumming the theme song. It's so incredible. That's like, I was so sheltered and white when I was growing up, and the stuff that white cult collectors like me were thinking was, oh wow, all these blaxploitation movies, that was their mainstream. That's how Melvin Van Peebles made a $10,000 movie, Sweet Sweetback, and made $10 million in the inner city. I'm like, and 5,000 of that was given him by Bill Cosby, but everybody.
We'll try to ignore that.
Yeah, we'll ignore that.
Yeah.
But so I've made my case I just wanted to basically say that for all these reasons, I think it's an important movie, not just that I love it or I have met some of the cast, blah, blah, blah. But she's really ferocious and it's really humorous. And her and Jack Hill and Sid Haig really made some fun stuff together. 4 movies they made together are just really fun films. And she went on to, reign for a few more years. In 75, she did 3 films: Bucktown, Sheba Baby, Friday Foster, which is based on a comic strip, the very first black female comic strip lead character, which started in the late 60s. And they're all fun movies. I'm a Pam aficionado. And of course, Jackie Brown is the ultimate final big tribute. I read that she'd been referenced in other movies that I didn't remember, like Spike Lee's Girl 6, which I did like, but I didn't remember the Foxy Brown reference. And then, of course, the rapper took her name But yeah, that's my first pick.
Cool. I love all of the just like history of this film that you're able to talk about because definitely that's important.
Well,
Not only like within our topic, but also just like with like Black representation in film in general. Obviously, it has led to a lot of other things that have come out more recently, and that's really cool to see how that's developed over time.
Let me read you this tiny thing from Wikipedia because this ties exactly in with what you're saying. I mean, like totally.
Yeah.
Between how people looked at it then, how people look at it now, and all that kind of stuff. There was a note on Foxy Brown. So one of the problems people had, i.e., problems meaning rich white critics who live in New York, hated the movie, was that it was called blaxploitation, and so it's the typical liberal catch-22. It's like we think it's trash, but then again, it's featuring a minority we're supposed to be in solidarity with, but really aren't. And so we can't say it's trash. So damn it, what do we do? So it's kind of like a stretch. And so the reception, this whole thing is a soundtrack home meet influence. Okay, so influence is like page after page after page. And one of the things is what is blaxploitation? And they're basically saying, it was considered derisive by many people, the people who made the movie. Themes and analysis. Yeah, themes and analysis is like a little book. So I've already quoted all of it, but this part, blaxploitation. So it defines blaxploitation as exploitation films that usually target the Black audience in urban communities. Blaxploitation was very popular at the time this film was made. Parts of the film industry saw untapped box office potential, i.e., why United Artists or whoever picked up Foxy Brown, the MGM picked up all those movies. And it says the reputation has shifted from low-budget Black exploitation films to American classics worthy of deeper analysis. Although criticized for exploiting African American culture, this is always my point. At the time, it provided one of the few ways for African Americans to even get into the film industry.
Yeah, that's true. It's really complicated, and I think that's something that like I feel like as as a white scholar who like I'm a scholar as well as a fan. I research popular culture and I write about it. I feel like that's something that like with those of us who are white and who do this work really need to like kind of stay in our lane with it, because I think that it's more complicated. It's like is exploitation like 100% bad? Is it 100% good? No, it is somewhere in between, because it's providing work, it's providing opportunities, it's providing opportunities back then for people to see themselves on screen where they might not at all otherwise. And so that does some good, maybe not in the best way, maybe not for the purest of intentions, but
there's nothing like it now
that led to where we're at.
The closest anything came was the 90s with John Singleton and Reginald Hudlin and Mario Van Peebles and and I'm not a huge fan of any of their movies. Spike Lee, I like some of their movies as a kind of subgenre of modern blaxploitation. I'm not that into it. Maybe it's because I'm not Black. Maybe it's just not my thing. But then again, I love the 70s and 80s ones. But it's a different sensibility, because in the 90s, these guys, Spike Lee did not want to be a blaxploitation director. He wanted to be a serious director. And a lot of the blaxploitation movies in the 70s were directed by white people. Not all of them. Many people say every one of them, but quite a few were directed by Black people. But some of the major ones, like the one I reviewed, The Spook Who Sat by the Door, that was directed by Ivan Dixon, who did Nothing But a Man, groundbreaking Black film in the 60s. Also, he was an actor. He played on Hogan's Heroes. But he was a great filmmaker, man, And the people who aren't all caught up in that shit of that generation, they were just happy to have the work. And what I've been told, what I've read and quoted and actually been told by one or two people in the industry, was like, we looked on the screen and we saw ourselves represented. But it's not just that. It's a step beyond representation.
Right.
Like, we saw that everyone around us was white and racist, and we kicked their fucking ass.
Yes.
Everybody goes home
Yes.
happy. And so it's like a cultural wish fulfillment. And
Mhm.
that's powerful, you know, and
Yeah.
I think I picked up on it because I've always been into the other, you know, I'm a straight white guy, but I mean, you know, that doesn't define me at all. I mean, you know,
Mhm.
I love all cultures. I'm fascinated by people things different than me, exotic or however you
Same,
want to put it.
yeah.
And
I mean, I'm not a straight white guy, but I'm a white person, and I love exploring culture from people's different perspectives, you know. And I think that, you know, it's important to consider these things and to realize that people might not react to something the way that you expect them to based on your understanding of the like political stuff. Because sometimes I'll see something and be like, oh, is that gonna be a problem? And then actually my friends who are part of that identity group are like, no, actually we love this. And I'm just like, okay, cool.
well, you're in a good, but
That's
you're in
that's
an
how y'all
interesting
feel
position.
about it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
defer to you, you know.
Well, you're in an interesting position because of your generation
Hmm.
and sexual orientation. A lot of
Hmm.
it now, uh, people in your area of, you know, demographic, if you want to call it. I'm not trying
Hmm.
to lump you, but you know, are kind of taught to kind of hate a lot of the movies I'm describing
Yes, yeah,
because they're
especially because
problematic.
like
You know.
God, like, you know, because you know, like I'm now officially, according to a survey that I recently filled out, in the 30 to 49 age bracket. Oof.
Mm.
Um that was fun. Made me feel a little old, even though
Welcome to
I'm at
my
the
world.
younger end
Yeah.
of that bracket.
Yeah, wait till you cross that 55 plus
Oh
Mhm.
God.
thing.
Ah! So weird, so weird.
Beats the
Because you know,
alternative.
like my generation, I feel was very much raised with like colorblind like values, right?
Mm.
You know, it's like don't pay attention to race, treat everybody the same. And
Mm.
then that's not a good way to go about it, because you have to acknowledge that people are different and people have different experiences.
Yep.
You can't just ignore it. You have to
No,
actually engage with
they
it.
might need our help, and I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm a proud ally of a lot of Black revolutionaries on the internet.
Mhm.
Oh, is someone watching? I'm just kidding. No, I no, we've talked
You're
about this
on some
before.
kind of list
Yeah,
just
I've
by
mentioned
virtue of
before.
being you. It's
I
cool.
follow a lot of far leftists, a lot of far leftists, black and white, and all kinds of, you know, people now who
Right.
are trying to. They're the kind of people who are, you know, right now out there stopping ships from leaving the port in Oakland with weapons to take to Israel, and they physically stopped it 100. And you know,
Wow.
this is,
Interesting.
and every day there's more and more of it, and it makes me happy and proud.
Yeah.
But of course I fear, you know, I'd be like, they could just blow them all up. But my
Yeah.
point is that a lot of more people are more engaged with making the world a better place than we're
Mhm.
told in the mainstream media. And I think
Yeah.
that's the hope I have for the future, because I'm overall.
Me too. And then like the generation coming behind me, like, you know, I'm very firmly like in the millennial Gen Y generation, whatever you want to call it, the avocado toast generation or whatever the hell. I'm sorry. I'm reclaiming that. I bought an avocado toast Christmas ornament for my quirky Christmas ornament collection because I was just like, I have to get this.
That is hilarious. So
It's just the generation more stuff is so stupid, and I
know.
kind of like to lean into it and just be silly about it. But you know, like the generation coming in behind me that I teach, you know, because I teach college classes sometimes. They're like even farther ahead with that, you know, because they grew up with even different messaging from what you guys grew up with, like in Gen X, and me and Gen Y, these guys Gen Z, and then Gen Alpha behind them.
I think we're three generations here.
It's so
Mm.
cool.
It
Yeah.
is cool.
I guess maybe some of y'all are in the, I don't like to presume people's ages, so I'm just like,
I'm
I
61,
just know
so
Henry
I
has
might be
said,
the
you
elder
said
here.
that you're Gen X.
We're in three different age demographics.
Three different,
I'm not
wow,
going to
it's
say
cool.
anything other than that because
Cool.
I know it can offend people. I don't want
Henry, I'm looking at the clock and I need to leave pretty soon.
You want to
Oh
do yours
goodness.
real quick? Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
mind if I
No, I don't. I
briefly
was about to
cover?
suggest it actually.
Okay, thank you very
Let's
much.
go
Yeah,
for
man.
it.
The second one I'm going to do kind of piggybacks on the first one I did, Lady Snowblood. And the title of this one is, Henry will probably like this. It's Stray Cat Rock Delinquent Girl Boss.
Hell yeah.
1970.
I'm gonna need that title again so I can write it down in my notes.
I've got the whole box set. I'll send you pictures.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Stray Cat Rock Delinquent Girl Boss. And as Henry can tell you, also having the box set, it's a series of 5 films by I think at least 2 different directors. I've only had a chance to see the first one.
Asiba does most of them.
Yeah, the movie the first one I'm going to cover is by Yasuhiro Hasibe or Hasiba, and done in 1970. And it also has Meiko Kaji in it, although she's not the main character. And this movie was a bit of a revelation to me, particularly in the star of it. The series started in 1970, and it was created as a vehicle for Akiko Wada, who was a singer, and her character in the film is a lot like her backstory, like her real life. She's a Korean minority living in Japan. She was born in 1950, and like a lot of Korean people that are born there, they're not necessarily citizens. Like in America, if you're born here, you're a citizen. There, that's not the case. But they did let a lot of Korean ethnic people become citizens in the mid 50s. And she was born, what was her name? My notes here. She was born Kim Bok-ja in 1950, and in the after she got a citizenship, she assumed the name Akiko Wada.
Okay,
and she was kind of a like the character in the film. She was kind of a delinquent girl boss. She started skipping school in her teens and ultimately dropped out of school. And by 1968, though, she started becoming a singer. And in her career, she's had a long and thriving career. In fact, I'm going to tell you something that's kind of interesting in a little bit. But she became a singer, has put out 70 singles and many, many countless albums.
Oh, cool.
And but at this point of her career, she had been a successful singer, so they created this film for her. And I got to say, her character, it's not a perfect film. It's, and some people might not like it, but she's a very queer-coded kind of character. She's, for one thing, Akiko Wada is very tall for a Japanese woman, especially a Japanese woman of her generation. She's like 5'9". She has a very deep voice,
Yeah, she's
kind of a slightly androgynous persona about her. She's beautiful, but not conventionally
She's very
beautiful.
cool.
But
Yeah.
I felt like I couldn't take my eyes off of her. The way she kind of chew her lip, and she had kind of a thuggish, but really earthy and likable quality about her. And I thought she was amazing. And briefly, I'll tell you the plot of this film is that Akiko Wada, and she goes by Akko, which is actually her nickname in real life, and many people know her as Akko. She's just sort of vagabond biker chick, and she comes across this girl gang who's headed by Meiko Kaji, who goes by May in this film. And they're about to have a knife fight with this other girl gang. So she comes in and basically interferes with it. And because the rival girl gang brings in some boy gang guys that are kind of going to beat the girls up. So she comes in with her motorcycle like a total badass and just, basically takes charge of everything and runs off the boys and the bad girls, and they get their ass kicked and slink off. And so anyway, she takes up with this gang, and it's interesting because she's very queer coded. Other girls seem to really like her, and they want to dance with her, and they're like, "Ooh," because she's quite androgynous looking. In fact, many people don't know that she's a girl until she takes her helmet off. And
that is such a common trope in Japanese film, and you see it a lot in anime and manga as well, with kind of like an androgynous girl that, like, with that queer coding, that's very, very common. Yeah.
Well, she was so I think she invites revisiting it and kind of a rediscovery. Unfortunately, the plot of the film is, that happens, and then there's Meiko Kaji has this boyfriend who's kind of a dork, and he wants to be part of this nationalist kind of Yakuza gang. They all have like matching uniforms, kind of like Yukio Mishima kind of approach.
Yeah, Mishima's
to life. Yeah, and so but anyway, there's national. He wants to be a part of this national gang. Then I can be a man, he says. So he has a friend who's a boxer, and so he tells his friend to throw the fight so the gang can bet on him and make a lot of money. But the he at the last moment he decides to not throw the fight because Akiko Wada says, get up. And she has this ability in the film to basically make everybody do their best. She encourages them by her presence and by her example. She's a born leader, and everyone, she becomes shamed at the inability to follow through with things. But she's not like a nagging kind of person. She does it by example. That's what I liked about her a lot. So anyway, he doesn't throw the fight, so it ends up with there's problems. But I'll leave on that the thing that startled me. I kept watching this film, go, God, what do I know her? She looks so familiar to me. And then I realized that I had seen her before, much older, because she's become this revered Japanese personality. Kind of, I don't have an example, but she has a talk show called Leave It to Akko, and she actually made at one point, I'm not sure if this still stands, the Guinness World Record for talk show host with the same continuing host.
Wow.
And so she's been this talk show host forever, and I'd seen her. My brother used to dump all these like discs of Japanese media on me that he would get off the internet, and she had this one episode where she was exploring the world of cosplaying. So she's this giant Japanese woman, with a pretty androgynous, but they have her dressing up like in the Sailor Moon kind of stuff. It was kind of funny, but that was my first exposure to her. But I kept saying, now where do I know her? But she's what else was I going to say about her? Well, I did a little bit of research into her, and she's quite interesting. She has also a career as a voice actress. And among her credits, she was the voice of Bowser in the Mario Brothers animated movie, the Japanese version. And she was the voice of Marge Simpson in the Simpsons movie,
Japanese, yeah.
which I thought was pretty amazing.
That's interesting.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to have to say goodbye. I look forward to seeing the next film in that series, which is Stray Cat Rock Wild Jumbo, which brings back the director Fuji, who directed Lady Snowblood. So on that note,
my favorite is Sex Hunter. So let me know what you think when you get to that one.
Well, I'll get back to you. I'm going to watch them all because I did get copies of all of them.
Fabulous.
Okay,
Okay,
so
man.
thanks for a spirited discussion, Frank.
Yeah,
Too,
thank
man.
you for your contributions, and I'm
right,
definitely
I'll
gonna
see
have
you
to check
on
that out. I'm so
Hopefully
intrigued
we'll
now.
see you soon, man.
See you then. Bye-bye.
All right, Richard, take care.
Ciao.
So I think Bill is next. Yeah.
Okay. So let me just check something out here. I gotta find where the hell I was.
I relate to that so much.
Yeah. Well, I've got two things. One of them is, we tend to think of women warriors. A lot of times we're just replacing a stereotypical male warrior with a woman warrior. I've already said I got a little bit of a problem with that. But there's other ways you can fight. There's other ways, and women can take the long view. And so I want to bring up Lady, I may be pronouncing it wrong. It's been a while since I saw the movie. Lady Kaede from Kurosawa's Ran.
Yeah, Kaede is correct.
Oh man,
Lady Macbeth.
Yeah, except she doesn't.
Oh no,
go
that's
nuts.
from King Lear. My bad.
She stays. Oh no, yeah. I mean, she is a kind of Lady Macbeth-esque character, but she's calm, cool, collected, and she gets her vengeance. She doesn't do it by picking up a sword. She doesn't do it by any of these things. She does it by her wits and the fact that she's the smartest person in the room. So
love it.
If anyone hasn't seen Ran, it's one of Kurosawa's greatest films, which means it's one of the greatest films of all time. And it's a wonderful, another example of my favorite thing, cultural appropriation, where he said, hey, you know what? I'm going to make King Lear. And it's
all for it.
Yeah. So
it's a beautiful movie.
It's brilliant. You watch that, and it's like, maybe this is the way King Lear should have been written, and maybe if Shakespeare had known about samurai and stuff, he would have gone here. And there's an elderly lord who decides to divide up his kingdom among his 3 sons. Classic blunder. It goes horribly wrong, and he doesn't realize it, and nobody really realizes. But part of the reason it goes so badly is Lady Kaede, who's she's the wife of one of the sons, and this great lord pretty much destroyed her family and sold her off to, you know, kind of Game of Thrones-esque marriages here. And in short order, she pretty much arranges the complete and total destruction of this guy's legacy. One son after another falls under her, and we finally get the scene at the end. You know, she's manipulated these guys into marrying her and killing their wives, and da 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 da. The Lord is now completely bonkers, wandering out there, and they the loyal servant of one of the kings runs in there, and it's like, you've destroyed everything. This is what happens when you let a woman tell you what to do. And she's just sitting there, and she's like, you know, this is what I wanted. I've been plotting this all along. And she just tells them that she's played them like a fiddle. And of course, his reaction is to lop her head right off, which means she won again. Because while they're all going to be slitting their bellies open at the end and dying in absolute horror, she got a quick and easy vengeance, but not before she saw the complete ruin of this. It kind of reminds me of my favorite Jack London story. I think it was called Lost Face, where a guy manages to manipulate this tribe that's taken him, captured him, and is about to torture him to death, manages to manipulate them into killing him in the most merciful way possible by tricking them. I love that. You know you're going to go out, and then of course Tarantino did that whole routine in True Romance with Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper, yeah.
You know, if you know you're going to die, and you're probably going to die screaming, begging for mercy, and spilling your guts about things you'd rather take with you to the grave, if you can figure out a way, you know, to really yank on Christopher Walken's chain, that's probably the way to go. Because, yeah.
So flipping it to a mirror of King Lear, she's basically the Edmund the Bastard character.
You know, it's been so long since I saw King Lear.
Same. That one's a little less fresh in my brain.
Yeah, it really is. Tell you the truth, I've seen Ron more often than I've seen King Lear.
I don't know if I've ever seen a King Lear.
She also sounds like a similar character to Livia and I, Claudius.
Yes.
Manipulating, controlling everything.
Yeah. And of course, they completely disregard her because she's just a woman, and all the things that she's doing are just out of her petty jealousies, and she's more than happy to let them go along with that and play that role until the very end, when she is just so cool as she does this. I mean, don't get me wrong, she's a despicable character in a movie full of them, but you gotta admire that, you know, the way she plays these people. It's they destroy themselves with her great help. But can I just end with this? And this is not exactly a movie thing, but I would like to make a plea. If there's any filmmakers out there that are watching this, if you would please make a movie about Saint Olga of Kiev.
Yeah.
Okay. Why has this not happened? Okay. So if
there's lot, there are so many, like, both historic women warrior type of character of figures, and also like from folklore, that do not have films about them yet, and it makes me furious.
This one. Okay, listen, for all I know, everything I'm about to tell you is bullshit. I don't care. It needs to be true. So Saint Olga, and she wasn't a saint at the time. Oh, believe me, she was not a saint at the time. She was the wife of a tribal leader, and he went off to get tribute from the Drevelians. Remember that name, because you're never going to meet a Drevelian in
Sounds
your
like
life.
a Star Trek alien.
Yeah. Well, this is the closest you're ever going to get to talking to one, because, well, listen, the Drevelians basically didn't want to pay tribute, so they tied his leg between two bent birch trees, and okay, so that was the end of that.
Oh my God.
So now she's a widow with a kid, and they had the gall, the temerity, the chutzpah to send a group of 20 messengers demanding that she marry their king, the guy who just killed her husband. And she counteroffered by burying them alive. Then, realizing news traveled slow in these pre-internet days, she sent out word that she'd like to meet the best and brightest of the Drevelian tribe, which astonishingly was a large number of people. because I don't know. When you hear the story, I don't think they really were the best and the brightest. So the king and all the wisest men came to a feast, and they never saw it coming, but I would have. They locked the doors, set the place on fire, and burned them alive.
Love it.
Wow.
This is like the very
Coincidence.
definition of if you guys have heard like the kind of like silly tongue-in-cheek feminist like good for her type
Yeah.
of, this is the very definition of a good for her story.
So then she appeared to
Wow.
change her mind. And they went to the Trevelyan's with a big, group of people and her, and she was properly repentant. And she said, let's have a big party and drink lots of beer. And the Trevelyan's thought this was great, drank like fishes, not noticing that her tribe were nursing the same thing pretty much all night long. And when they got good and drunk, she red weddinged the entire group. I mean,
I'm literally just thinking of the red
just
wedding. Oh my
completely
god.
5,000 mourners dead. Okay.
Love it.
Now,
Love
by
it,
this
love it,
time,
love it.
by this time, the Trevelyan's realized that they were finding out what happens when you fuck around, and they petitioned her for mercy. And to everyone's astonishment, she was okay with that. She magnanimously agreed that if they would simply give her a token tribute of 6 live birds from each home. She was very specific about it, 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows. The Trevelyan's are running around like idiots, picking this, they're clearly not one of the sharpest tribes in history. And they got these, they sent it to her, and at no point did they ever wonder how badly this was going to end for them. Well, very badly, because then they tied little some kind of incendiary devices to their legs and let them go, where of course they flew back home and burned Dravelia, or whatever the hell it was called, to the ground. Whoever was left was sold into slavery, just grateful to be getting out of as far away from Kiev as possible. And and that's the story. But then, having sated her revenge in what has to be the most complete way possible, she converted to Christianity and became a saint. And I believe, and I do truly believe this, that she is up in heaven right now, and on a big table with all the other saints, listening to their story and just snickering, because oh my God, that is amazing.
Love
Great
her. I feel
women
like she
of
belongs
history.
in Valhalla, honestly. Like,
If there ought to be a
God.
movie where the Ukrainians try to bring her back to life. Because if I were Putin and I heard that she was walking the streets toward Moscow, I would just shoot myself in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what
no,
we need.
we're not gonna fuck with Saint Olga.
Nope.
That's a bad idea.
That's a big old nope.
Oh man. Oh god.
Oh.
That would be a great like modern like twist on the story. Yeah. That would be really cool. I'd love to see that.
Oh, she would be like the Ukrainians' golems.
Yeah.
That would just be a force of nature. Yep.
No, I would love to see that. Somebody please make that.
Make
My
this
God.
movie. Yeah.
Somebody who has money and a budget and
Right.
the ability to do it justice. Please make this. I need to see it so bad.
Maybe Wolfgang Peterson can get his shit together.
There you go. Yeah, what's he been up to?
He went from
lately?
Das Boot to all these just generic action movies, and I'm like, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, that's my contribution for the night.
Okay,
Well, that is a
was
great place
delightful.
for me
No,
to
that was
take off
delightful.
now.
Oh,
So I
okay.
got to take off.
all right, buddy.
And so
right,
now it'll
bye,
be
Keith.
down to 4 of you. And I'll
Thank
be
you.
curious to
The final
hear what
four.
happens
The
after.
final 4.
after I'm gone. So
We're going to
take it
talk
easy.
about you.
Okay.
Obviously, we're going to talk about you. Yeah.
Glory, your strength and power.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Bye
Keith.
now.
Take care, my friend. So, Kaylin, what is your next pick?
Nothing anywhere even remotely as cool as Saint Olga of Kyiv. So,
Oh well, call it an
God, how am I supposed to follow that?
That's what they call a thread killer on the internet.
Yeah, there you go.
It is.
But that's
Man,
the cool
Bill,
thing.
you just
But
killed
wait.
our entire
No,
tale.
listen, you know how Henry's been doing this. He's been chopping these up. You can slip that anywhere. It's like, and then the next episode,
Mic drop.
you start up like fresh and new. It's
Oh,
I actually
Oh,
like.
God.
I do like the
No,
way
that
you've
was
been doing it,
beautiful.
Henry.